So, you want to be a DJ, one of the greatest vocations in the world, playing music for a living. And whether it's filling floors around the world or hosting your city's top radio show, we think you'll find all the advice you need on this video to put you on the right track. We'll look at battling DJs, DJ producers, and radio DJing later. Firstly, the club DJ. There are 3 types of club DJ: the mixer, the personality, and the one who combines both. Okay, how do we get started?
It all began, I started helping a guy in Birmingham who was like one of the top DJs. I was just lifting his record boxes and stuff like that and moving his equipment. And one night he couldn't make it, so a guy called Mike Hollis, who's now in Luxembourg, he said, "Why don't you do it?" And I said, "Well, I don't think I could." And I just tried it and loved it and never looked back. Went from that, going down to wine bars, then to nightclubs, and just gradually sort of getting bigger and bigger and bigger until, you know, you get to the top.
I got started mixing tapes in my house for Kiss FM. That's how it all sort of started. I had a little DJ booth in my house, and I just got started and worked for the radio station because I was friends with Chef Pettibone, and he was already doing dance parties there, and he hooked me up with that, and I just was a closet DJ, and that's how I started.
I first got into DJing when I was about 18, 19 years old. I was just a punter going to see various clubs around the north of England. One particular club brought in an American DJ who brought over a style which I'd never seen before. Previously it was usually music chat type of scenario. And this guy came across from America in the very early 80s, and he was putting records together seamlessly. It sounded like a long tape, and I just couldn't understand what was going on. So I tracked down the DJ who was playing in the God somewhere and watched him for about 2 hours and got the bug. And I thought, well, this is something very exciting and this is what I want to do. At that particular time, I just held down a normal daytime 9-to-5 type of job, but the music was inside me trying to get out.
It was a really weird thing. I didn't really realise that I was going to be a DJ. It was almost like a progression of me being a 7-night-a-week clubber, really. And in the event that I was in a club for 7 nights a week, there was going to be some kind of progression, and that progression was DJing. It wasn't something that I realised at any significant time at all, really.
So what was your first real break?
My first real break came around the summer of 1987. I'd spent the 2 years previous in Ibiza, which obviously was pretty influential at the time and had set some scene and some sort of guidelines as to what was going on club-wise. And Paul Oakenfold, who was a friend of mine, brought that scene back to the UK. And because I attended every single club night that he ever did, one night when Nancy wasn't available to DJ with him, he said, "You're DJing." And so I suppose he gave me my first break, really.
I got started when I was about 12 or 13. Friends of my family business was really into DJing and used to give me tapes. Got me hooked on it, saved up, worked all through the summer holidays, got myself some decks, just practiced, schoolwork went out the window. Every single penny I had went on records, and then by 16 I'd saved up and bought Technics and was working in local hotel doing like college parties and birthday parties and stuff like that, progressing into nightclubs, doing the warm-up set, you know, playing the first hour and a half before the main DJ coming on. Basically learning my trade, you know, the old-fashioned way, and then finally getting the break where a DJ fell out of a club and I fell into his shoes, and then progressed from there, really.
There are DJ conventions all over the world these days, but we think you'll like this one, the Winter Music Conference in Miami, Florida. 1 or 2 DJ legends give their advice, including Arthur Baker.
John Luongo actually taught me everything I know about playing records. It would be have 2 copies and just cut between the 2 and really be quick. But that back then people really weren't as critical of a DJ as they are now. I mean, obviously back then people didn't know what to expect, and it was more, you could play pretty much anything, and there wasn't but one thing that you needed then and you need now is really have to have patience with your audience. I think that I would say that would be the number one thing for me. I never had patience with my audience. I'd play a new record, and if they didn't like it, I'd get really frustrated. I'd end up throwing the record out, breaking it, throwing it out of the dance floor. So that you don't do that. It costs you too much money.
My friends were bouncers at a nightclub, and they brought me to the club, and I saw a DJ playing records, and I thought it would be a lot of fun, considering all the pretty girls were walking up to the DJ booth, and record companies were giving them records for free.
I just got tired of hearing what the DJs were playing in the clubs at the age of 15, and decided to go out and buy my own records, and one way or another wound up in the clubs playing the stuff, because I just got tired of hearing the same records over and over, and that's pretty much how it started, playing alternative, new wave, when I was 17. Been DJing for 9 years now.
Not to say that I'm great, but the reason I think that I do what I do is because I don't go out. I don't socialize with other DJs. I don't get influenced by anything else. So I've sort of developed it all myself. Like, I'll take 10 records and maybe 9 of them I'll like, but that 10th one maybe someone else will like, but I just sort of don't get influenced by anyone else. But I think what would make a great one is if they stay true to what they believe and not play the same 10 records that everyone else is playing. They really have to be experimental and sort of, even if there's only 10 records, at least mix those 10 records up a way that someone else isn't mixing them up. And you really have to work. You have to work. Not just records, but samplers and keyboards. And I mean, you really just have to sort of find your own art to it, I guess. Yeah.
I think to be original, you've got to try and develop your own style. That's the most important thing. Get ideas off DJs, but don't copy them. Always think, well, how can I do that to make it my own, rather than just copying it straight away. That's the best way. And I'd also think, start your own night, midweek, find a small club, promote it, build up a following, and then that way, people will know that you can fill a club, and you can progress from there, and then maybe you go to a club and say, look, I'm filling this on a Wednesday night, will you book me? I can bring a coach, I can bring this. You've got to offer some clubs, you've got to offer them something now, there's hundreds of DJs, why would they want to book you over someone else? You've got to be able to go to them and say, I can fill your club on a Wednesday night, I can earn you money. Because promoters, that's what they do, they want to earn money, so it's basically promote yourself, build up a following, and the rest should, follow. It's not going to be easy, but it wasn't easy for me. It wasn't easy for anyone. They're not going to knock on your door and say, yeah, here's the front page of Mix Mag or whatever.
If I was a young aspiring DJ, what I would admire about Junior Vasquez is the fact that I don't do drugs, and I can play 18 hours without repeating records.
To a budding DJ, try and get all the music that you can, because ultimately it's the music that you're playing. Believe in what you do, believe in the music that you're playing in, and technically do the best that you can. But believe that scratching up decks or mixing from one record to another, you're playing to a crowd, so have their hearts at your heart. And if you can translate that through your music, then that makes a good DJ.
I think to be a great DJ, not just personality, but right across the board, that's the main thing. You have to be able to mix, you have to be able to choose your music correctly, you have to be able to have a certain repertoire with the customers that are in the club. I think that's the most important thing. A lot of DJs nowadays, they can mix and they've got great music, but they can't communicate with the audience. And I think if you have a certain percentage of all of those traits, then I think you can be successful.
People who play to the crowd, people who are a bit characters as well, characters who play to the crowd, somebody a crowd can relate to, and who plays different stuff each week in, week out, and not the same sort of music over and over again.
Well, it's totally different in South Africa, but I believe a great DJ is somebody that can relate to the crowd, get a crowd going, obviously good mixing skills, but I'll say a good DJ is somebody that can communicate well with the crowd, and if he's got a following, great, he's a great DJ. If he's got a big enough following.
A great DJ feels the music in their heart. If you don't feel the music, you can't play to a club. You can't convey that to your audience. You have to feel it.
It's probably being versatile. It's working your room at all times. There's no one set way. Creating a mood, creating an atmosphere, creating excitement and energy. And it's just not flipping records and blending records like to where you, this record, you didn't even hear that record come in. That's good, but you got to work your room. If you're not working your room, you're not doing your job.
In my mind, what makes a great DJ is actually you have to be mainstream, and I think you need to be on a 3-month contract, the old style like Mecca used to, and then every 3 months you have to make sure your nightclub's full. If it isn't, you're out of a job. There's no more motivation than making sure you've got a full audience and they're dancing to you to keep you in work.
I think, as they always say, a DJ's job is to both entertain and educate. So I reckon like maybe 2 out of every 3 tunes you play should be something the crowd knows and something they can relate to. Otherwise it's not worth breaking stuff that they don't know anything about all the time.
What do I think make a great DJ? See, a lot of people look at DJs in so many different aspects. You may look at a DJ as far within the listener, as far within his skills, or maybe combined. What makes a great DJ is the ear. To me, the ear is the most valuable thing because you got to listen to what you're programming. You got to have your timing set how you're going from one record to another. You got to learn how to have the timing for within the radio pleasure, as far as for the club pleasure, as far as the show pleasure. Radio pleasure is for people that listen to your radio, you're ever doing mixes, that you keep the interest going on and they will not turn you off. For in the club, as far as the dance pleasure, that you can make them move all night. You can bring them up, you can bring them down. And within the show pleasure, as far as saying like all the tricks you do will make you, spectacular and zig and all. You know how it is to trick DJs. I like to play, but that will make a great DJ in all 3 aspects.
Making a DJ stand out from another one is probably a mixture between technical ability matched with musical ability. Musical ability, unfortunately, comes basically through access of music, which is different channels, whereas technically it's down to skill. That makes a DJ in a lot of ways. Because you can have a DJ that unfortunately doesn't get access to the music, technically can wipe the floor with a lot of people. That is wicked.
Blag as many mailing lists as you can because you'll never be able to afford to keep up with the records. That's what I did anyway.
Well, the advice that I would give a DJ to get residency, actually one advice I would give them, the advice of what not to do, and that's to stab another DJ in the back. That's obviously not the thing to do, or try to get into their space after they left something or other. But I think, that's on a personal note, but I think to get residents, maybe you just have to hang out. I don't know, talk to people. I mean, it happened differently for me because I really took enormous amounts of money and I put it into a space. I mean, maybe that's what someone should try to do also. I don't know. Times have changed, but
I have no idea why there are so few women DJs, but that is something that is very apparent. I really don't know whether girls may feel a struggle before they even get there or whatever, because ultimately it is a male-dominated business. I just think if you're into the music and you like going to clubs and you're up front and you want to do it. I don't think sex should really come into it.
My name's DJ Shosh. We work with ACT Promotions. We're involved mainly in free parties because we feel that's the way forward. More of a techno scene. We go around to people's houses, empty squats, fields, and do raves there. Basically on the old style of things. We're more into it for the fun, have a good time. We don't want to charge people extortionate prices and rip them off. Basically, we're just into having fun.
What does it mean, underground?
Someone who tends to be more up front, playing everything out, out of what's maybe big tunes, everything away from that. Or if it is big stuff, maybe stuff that's going to be big, more of an up-front type vibe, music that's big before the masses get a hold of it anyway.
So here we are with Kia from Delight. Tell me, Miss Delightful Kia, what do you think makes a great DJ in a club?
I think what makes a great DJ is those that are courageous enough to be diverse, to mix many styles of music. There's so many things, happy hardcore, house, so many different styles you want to hear. And someone who really, their main goal is to move the crowd. I hate a DJ who tries to cover up the label and put tape over it, try to keep it a secret, or they'll play a record that's so underground, and sometimes there's a reason it's underground. No one else wants to hear it. So I like the DJs that play to move the crowd.
That's why the DJ becomes the artist, because he can play a record like he can play an instrument, and a DJ has to be able to flow a night with peaks and troughs. He has to control his crowd, he has to read his crowd. Obviously via mixing and syncing records together, you can take your crowd where you want them. There's enough great music out there, you've just got to play it right.
In some countries they tend to be more technically inclined, I think, than other countries, and I don't think that the crowd really notices it as much. It seems like American DJs tend to concentrate more on mixing, like really getting mixing down and stuff, whereas in Europe it doesn't seem to be that bothered by it as much. I mean, there's good mixers and everything, but it seems like for the numbers-wise, like there's a lot of DJs who are in pretty serious positions who aren't, sometimes they don't mix at all, or just, it doesn't really seem to matter as much, whereas over here everyone is really beat mix oriented.
I do DJ on an international level. Various things really. In July, August, September of this year, I was in Singapore. I've done Ibiza for the last 3-4 years, and then didn't do it for 3 or 4 years, and then did it before that as well, and Italy and places like that. So yeah, it's pretty international.
I think everything's been a big break, you know, from working in the biggest club in Hastings where I started, which at the time when I was 19, I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. You know, nothing was outside of Hastings, never been anywhere really, to working at Heaven, which to me was like a religious experience to go there, let alone to be playing there in 92 or 91, Rage, because I used to love it there, and then progressing to Renaissance, which is another big break, and then progressing to, you know, promoting Northern Exposure and doing CDs. So I think everything is like a big break. You know, I've set myself goals and seem to be achieving them.
I've DJed in places before and there's been 20,000 people. And when you're one little people up here with 2 little decks and there's like 20,000 people, which is a sea of heads, you're just like, wow, you know, things like that are just like, wow, wicked. But the travelling's very, very tiring. And, you know, DJs have become like countrywide DJs. They're not just DJing in their own town anymore, and you've really got to be prepared to travel. And that's very tiring, and it's not as glamorous as it's copped up to be anyway.
What advice do I give aspiring DJs? Keep your day job.
Managers get in my hair all the time because I'm a little sort of, I don't know how to put it, so let's say risque. And I've been sacked about 4 times from the Hippodrome and taken on again. The last time there was a guy jumping about on the light rig, about 100 feet in the air, and just because I told him to jump, the manager went mad and sacked me on the spot, and then 2 weeks later he took me back on again. So I've got good relationships with the managers. I think it's very important, because if he's going to start nitpicking at every little thing you say or do, it's just not worth it.
I think one of the important things you have to remember, DJs, is that don't lose the punter's heart. One time you listened to the beat and you were down there on the dance floor yourself, don't lose it. Don't get involved in all what's going on in the black and white music press. Get on with the feeling. Remember that beat.
The problem with club owners, they're always first to blame the DJ. If they're not drinking or they're not coming or they're blah, blah, blah. But if they will allow that DJ to develop himself, eventually the crowd will be there, and the club owner will get what he wants out of the evening. But I think that you have to stick by the DJ that you hire. And it doesn't always necessarily have to have a name. It just has to be someone who's good, and let them develop their talent.
Hi, my name's Ralph Randell. I was a DJ for about 12 or 14 years. Well, I gave up about 5 years ago, but I've just been asked a question, what would make a good DJ? In my case, I think I just used to go completely against the grain, do what I wanted to do, try and be a good DJ. Having said that, I think a lot of DJs now are just gone too hard into their own direction of music. I think that perhaps if they eased up a little bit and sort of encompass a greater spectrum of music rather than just say being a jungle DJ or being a hip hop DJ, a swing DJ. Mix it all up a bit and make it more interesting. I think there's a lot of people out there are really into that, you know.
At the Ministry, the DJs we decide on playing are basically made from the style of music we've taken. The Ministry's been very garage orientated, so it's tended to to lean towards the American side sound-wise. And at present, very few English DJs play that way. So at the moment, a lot of the Americans have been playing. More and more over the years, you see a lot more of the British boys coming up through that way, which has been great because we've been able to play a lot more of them.
There's various other DJs around that play the same music that I play, but they don't hype the crowd up verbally. And I mean, at places like the Hippodrome, you can make them literally do anything you want. You can get them clapping their hands in the air, jumping up and down, just whatever you want to do. And it's very easy, but you've got to have that command on the microphone. You know, we get them shouting back at us, and at the Buzz Bar, you know, I go on and play things like, you know, who thinks I'm lovely, da da da, and who thinks I'm a fat bastard, say you fat bastard, and they all shout like 2,000 people, you fat bastard. You fat bastard! We just have a scream. I think that's the main thing about DJing. You really have to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you know, I can tell when a DJ's not having a good time. He's panicking, he's keeping his head down, he's not looking at anybody. But no, I think the main thing is you have to involve your audience.
If you think I'm the sexiest thing that's ever stepped foot in London, say ho!
Why don't you come down the club? We've got a couple of clubs on tonight. I'll show you exactly what I mean. I always start off sort of on a low key. So if there's a support DJ and he's like trying to sort of get them going and everything, I always pull it right down. Stop, start again. Find a couple of reggae tracks, get them into the groove, and then just slowly go faster and faster, right up to the jungle stuff. Which is like 150 beats a minute, and then just bang straight down to reggae, some swing beats, and then put in one little party set of about 25 minutes in the middle somewhere. And I think one of my sort of trademarks is that I always leave them. I find a record that just finishes dead, and then I just pump them up right to the very last minute, and then bang, and that's when it's a bit of a trick really, because they all give you a big round of applause then if you finish on a high. Yeah, lots of people come up for requests. A lot of them write them down on £20 notes, on all sorts of strange things. Toilet paper, unused probably. Especially at places like the Hippodrome, because you've got a lot of rich foreign people, Arabs, etc. And they try and bribe you with money and stuff. And I never, ever take money off them. No, and I always do try and do... I'm not the kind of DJ who says, yeah, I'll play it later. If I'm not going to play it, I tell them straight I'm not going to play it. It's not what we do here. But I always try and accommodate those. It's just the thing that really annoys me is when they come up and say, I've lost my friend, I don't know where my friend is. And you go, so I never do those sort of so-and-so meet so-and-so by the front door. It's just, because that's just one person out of the 3,000 people that are there. That doesn't mean anything to anybody else. Sometimes you get a couple of people who come up, and if they're mob-handed maybe on a stag night or something, and they want to hear some tune that A, you haven't got, or B, you just don't want to play, they can be really, really persistent. But I think if you tell them right from the start, no, I'm not going to play that track, they usually sort of go away. There's been a couple of occasions where we've had to have people thrown out and stuff, but that's few and far between. But a lot of them you can accommodate. And even if it's a record that I don't particularly want to play, if there's a group of people there that want to hear it, then I'll try and squeeze it in somewhere. In most of the clubs that I do, there's a panic button. And when you set the button off, it tells them in reception whereabouts in the club the trouble is. So when the doormen come running in, about 10 of them, you just point to wherever the trouble is. And it's dealt with very, very quickly. And they're very professional people, and they just get them out, and they never, ever hit them. Never. I think the relationship between the bars manager and the DJ is quite important, because he's the one who sort of plies you with drink all night, firstly. But secondly, obviously the whole point of being there is that they actually you have to make money on the bar. That's the thing. You know, mostly you get a lot of free tickets to get in, etc. So they make a huge markup on drinks. I tend to sort of play my music in 3 or 4 record stints, so you can get like a Jungle People up for 20 minutes or so, and then you put something completely different on, and you tend to sort of change so they'll then go to the bar and the other people come on, So I continually change my music every third, fourth record. Never play more than 4 or 5 records at a time in any one genre of music.
Keep spinning them records.
The basic rules of beat mixing. Now, what one has to respect is the musical bar. All dance music is rigidly arranged in 4, 8, 16, 32 bar sections. Now, to each bar there are 4 beats. That is your golden rule, which you must remember. And to each bar there are 2 kicks and 2 snares. Or there are actually 4 kicks, but 2 snares on the 2 and 4. So on the record that's playing quietly in the background, you can hear the... Now that's the snare, or the clap. Now, when mixing a record to get into another one, you have to make sure that the kick drum and the clap are actually synchronized. There's no use having the snare or clap from one record over the 1 and the 3 beat. In other words, the first kick and the third kick on the record that's playing. Otherwise, the people who are dancing in rhythm will, although they'll move completely with the 4 to the floor movement, will not move properly because the snare on one record is coming in at the wrong position. It's very hard to explain, very easy to show. Okay, one very important factor, obviously, apart from bar positions and where you're actually going to do the mix, is to make sure that the records are synchronized. Now, obviously, you would prepare the mix on headphones before, but the record that's running here, as you can see, has no pitch alteration. It's basically running at the normal speed. However, over here on the right-hand deck, the record, as we prepared earlier, has a pitch adjustment in sort of about plus 1.5% on the SL1200. Now, any DJ worth his salt will know that this will have to be done to make sure that the record's synchronized. If this pitch control was at 0, this record would be slower than this one, therefore would not mix properly. So that's just a basic fundamental issue that we had to just remind you of. So this has already been prepared. Just to illustrate the mix, I've got queued up ready the first beat of a bar on this record on the right hand deck. The pitch adjustment is made so that the record should synchronize pretty much well with the record that's playing on the left hand deck. I can show you that I've queued up on the first beat of a bar. It's not a snare drum, it's the first kick drum of 1 bar, so it's actually beat 1. Now if we just play this record here and just mentally pick up on where the bar positions are. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're down to an instrumental sort of break. It's 3, 4. Keep counting that 1, 2, 3, 4. Usually crash cymbals start on the first beat of a bar. You can usually get a good indication of where a bar starts from that. There's the first bar, second bar. 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. So I've just launched the record on the right hand deck. I'm going to have to just busk this one now. So the beats are synchronized, the bars are synchronized. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, etc, etc, etc. So the bar positions are locked as well as the actual beats. And that's basically your fundamental beat mixing.
I'd like to now give you a guided tour around the SL1200. You have your, we'll start with the arm, and you can height adjust it or lower it. I'll move that across so you can see the turntable going down and up. And one of the main reasons you'll do this, if you're using other various styluses and cartridges, I suggest use Stanton's. Then you can just adjust that to compensate so there's not too much pressure applied to the record. You've got your anti-weight, which is an additional weight you can add on the back there. And you've got this style here, which is called an anti-skate, which basically stops the record from sliding across if you're moving it backwards or forwards. On and off switch, start and stop button, which we use in the mixes sometimes to simulate a kind of skidding effect. Your speed buttons, 33, 45. Your night light, that if you're in a dark environment you can use that to still see your grooves on your record. And this thing here called the pitch control, and basically it's plus or minus 8% of the original record speed. And if I just turn that record on, If you look here, where the light's flashing, you'll notice that it's normal pitch, that the middle bar is standing still. And if I move it to -8, you should then notice that the bottom one is starting to move. And there's a little diagram here which tells you what pitch it is. So you don't necessarily have to look on the pitch, you can sometimes just look on there. And some of tip what us DJs usually do is that when we're mixing and we're playing the record backwards, we can spin the record backwards and we'll get that standing still, and we will know that it's perfect pitch backwards. So you can still beat mix and blend your records there. So there's a little tip there for you. The pitch control on these turntables have a special additional feature, which is your reset button. And this basically enables you, if you're at -8 and you're in a quick mix, you can just select your reset button, on comes the green light, and you're in quartz lock, which is basically back at that standing position. So if I take it off, you notice the turntable's now slowed down. Set it back, and it's back at quartz lock, and that's plus or minus, whichever way this fader's at. And that's your turntable features.
I'll start off by introducing that there are two main different types of cartridges. One is called an AL and the other is called an EL. AL stands for a spherical stylus. I've got one here to show you. This is a 500 AL. This is the standard cartridge for the industry. It's not only won many industry awards, but it's also called the industry workhorse. Now, the 500 AL has a stylus tip which is slightly rounded. It therefore doesn't totally hold the groove in the vinyl. It's actually ideal for when you're scratching or beat mixing, so it's a perfect cartridge for the nightclub environment. This is an example of the EL version of the Stanton range. This means that the cartridge is spherical, and the stylus is actually slightly more pointed than on the AL version, meaning that it will hold the groove more securely and is ideal in a recording environment. So we find that people in the studio monitoring business, or the audio reproduction in general, will choose the EL over the AL. Therefore, if you are looking to become a bedroom DJ or DJing in clubs, the recommended stylus for you would be an AL and most probably the 500. One cartridge that doesn't need a head shell is the Stanton Trackmaster, and here we have the Trackmaster. This is a unique product in that it has its very long shape with very nice go faster stripes on it. It is a slightly more expensive product than the rest of the range, but its calibration internally is such that both its bass frequency and treble frequency is so good that it can actually raise the dB level of your audio up to 4 dBs. So you find that many famous DJs do actually prefer to use the Trackmaster. On top of the cartridge range, Stanton also manufacture a series of headphones. This one here is one of their Pro 101 series. It's a single cup handheld headphone, as you can see, which makes life very easy for the DJ. When you're busy, as you're queuing up, you hold it to your ear, obviously, then chuck it down as you're ready to fade your next track in.
These are the new DJ Technics headphones, which have a unique folding feature to them. So if you're playing out and you just want to listen to it in one ear, you can leave the other one folded, or vice versa. And also, they can fold away to pack away in this unique little Technics bag.
I think it's definitely a step in the future. I think it's in its infancy stages right now. CD players like the CD500G from Pioneer that allow DJs more flexibility and allow it to treat it more like a record in order for them to get their hands on it. I think it's a wave of what's going to happen. You certainly get a cleaner signal on a lot of the CD players. I'm definitely a vinyl man at heart, but what tends to happen is as things are moving forward, you're getting to fit more formats on a CD player. A lot of places don't even have vinyl outputs anymore, and so I think the DJs have to adapt to both vinyl and the CD now. And I think that the more that companies like Pioneer, the other companies like Best, whatever, but getting involved with feeding off the DJ, you know, what they need, they're going to be able to make things better for us in order to work the DJ, work the vinyl the way we would normally work the CD the way we would normally work the vinyl. It's not there yet, but it's getting there. I think what's happening is that you're getting closer and closer. You could take a look at something like this. It's getting close to the size of it. You know, the pitch adjustability of it is very similar now in a lot of areas. And that familiarity is what's going to be able to allow us DJs who've been playing on vinyl our lives to adjust to CDs. Though you're never going to be able to put your hand on a CD actually spinning without getting your fingers cut off, you'll be able to approximate the feel, and I think that, believe it or not, is the most important thing. And there's going to be things that can't be done right now that I think, like the other hip-hop DJs who look to scratch and so on and so forth. So that's a different area. It's going to take a little bit longer to move into, but definitely for club play, you know, these things are more familiar, you know, and I think that that's what's going to allow us to get into it. So I think, yeah, it's a good step in the future.
Right, these are one of the two main industry standard CD machines at the moment. This is the first one we'll look at, the DN2000F. Basically running through the CD unit, it's very much geared up like you would use a turntable, but the queuing facilities are much more accurate than you would on a turntable. Okay, the first feature we'll look at then is the basic function of slowing down and speeding up the track. That's at 0 pitch at the moment, and this is how we're slowing it down, as you would on a turntable. And speeding it up, and back to 0. The next function we can look at is queuing that particular record, the CD, queuing up the actual track. If we turn to this particular track, that's just started on the beats of that record, CD. If you go back to the very start of that, to the cue points, it sounds something like this. Right, we don't want that beginning intro, so what we'll do is take it to the point where the drums first come in. So using the search buttons, we can search through the track back to the beginning. As soon as we heard those drums, we hit the pause button. And that puts it into a mode where you can search within frames through the sound. You get to a point where that's the beginning of a kick drum, of the first beat, of the first bar, of where you want to start mixing from. You can hear it clicking away. When you're happy with that, you press the Q button to store that position. And that position is now stored until you're ready to use it for mixing. So when you press the play button, it's there. When you go back to that space point in the CD again, you press the Q button again and you'll get it again. So we're playing this track mixing to that one. Right, we'll show you this mix without headphones. At the end of these 8 bars, I will start the next track up. And if it's slightly out like it is now, you can do a slight pitch adjust on the pitch bend. Right, now we're into the next track. This is one of the main industry standard 2-piece CD players. The twin CD units there saves carrying like 2 turntables around. It's all in one easy rack unit. Also is the rackable front unit, which has got all the basic controls of the CD unit.
This is the Pioneer flagship, the CDJ 500 Mark II. It is a top-loading machine. The benefits of a top-loader machine are that you can get a CD in the machine quicker and remove the CD quicker than you can a draw-loading machine. One of the great features about this machine is the large jog wheel that sits in the middle of the player. The great thing about this wheel is it gives you the same hands-on control as you would do with a record. I'm now going to show you another form of mixing. We have a rhythm track playing out in the club, and on my headphones I'm going to cue up an a cappella to run over it. Okay, we have two CDs in the machines. One is a rhythm track and one is an a cappella. The a cappella sounds like this.
Standing in line, marking time, waiting for the welfare dime.
And the rhythm track sounds like this. And what I'm going to do now is run them both together. So I'll have the rhythm track playing out in the club, and I'll now bring the a cappella track over the top of the rhythm track so they blend together.
Standing in line, marking time, waiting for the welfare dime. Speaking by a job.
And at any time while you're playing out in the club, you can drop either track out.
Just for fun, he says, get a job.
And then you go back to an instrumental, or you can bring the a cappella back in, which is great on the Pioneer because it's instant start again. One of the other great features about the Pioneer is the time stretch mode. If you go into time stretch mode on both players, you can actually slow both machines down, and they should stay in the same key and stay in time. And you can do the reverse by speeding them up as well. And this is what it would sound like without the time stretch mode. They would sound pinky and perky. And when you slow them down, it will... This machine also has a loop facility, which I'll demonstrate to you now. By back cueing with the jog wheel, you find the start of the first kick of the first bar. Once you've found that, you push your loop 1. When you get to the end of the first bar, you push the cue point again and you bring it back. And when you think you've got it in the right place, you push the other loop point and it should now loop continuously, hopefully correctly, which it is. That will now run forever until you come out of the loop mode by pressing this button. We are now out of the loop mode, the track will now run normally. And if at the end of the track you want to go back to the loop mode, you just push the reloop button and it will take you back into the reloop. Learning to mix is easy, just get the equipment and practice. But remember, the great mixes come from up here, so good luck.
What we're going to look at right now is the Akai Remix 16 DJ Phrase Sampler. It's aimed squarely at the club DJs, with simplicity as the key. This machine has various complexities which I will not bore you with and tell you how technically wonderful it is. What I will show you later on is what it can do live in the mix. The basic format of what it can do, it will take samples either off record, CD, CD-ROM, etc., whatever your sound sources are, or even if you have an Akai sound library on floppy disk, it will take sounds from that as well. You can load these samples into the machine and assign each sample onto any of these 16 triggerable banks, which are very sturdy and very friendly. You can hammer them and trigger your samples. So it's very much a hands-on device. There's no computer controlling it. It's just the DJ. Over on the machine itself, I've already prepared some samples to show you basically what the machine can do. For example, on bank 1 we have a 2-bar section off a record which I can trigger manually. Quite easy to do that. And also there is a loop facility set up on this particular bank. And by holding it, so you can do that type of thing, actually create a loop so you can actually leave the record that you're playing and come on to the sampler and play around with this kind of thing. I mean, this thing is only limited by the actual creative ability of the DJ and his imagination. Some of the other features that the machine has is pitch control, very much like the SL1200, where you can alter the pitch of a sample just by switching it on, and very much like the SL1200. The range is actually a little bit higher. Just to illustrate how the machine works in the mix, as it were, I'm just going to play a record deck on the right and cut in some samples from the Remix 16 on the left here. So just check this out. Now, just by using the crossfade, once I go over to the left-hand side, the Akai is engaged. On the right-hand side, the deck is engaged, so you can get an effect like this. So I'm cutting in some samples from here, but I'm actually muting this side by moving the crossfader over. That sort of thing. You can blend the two. So what we've got running there is the Akai on the left-hand side, the record on the right, the crossfaders on the middle. Okay, upcoming now on the record we have a phrase which says body's moving, so what we're going to do is take that phrase literally off the record and let the sampler loop it and then mix back into it like this. Okay, so we're over here now, and I'm triggering that particular sample. What we're going to do now is hold it and loop it. So as you can hear, the loop is set up, it's in time, it's in beat, the crowd is still moving, but the record is actually looping. People will not know what's going on. Okay, so we've got the loop set up on this side. I'm just going to cross over between the sampler and the record and let the record take it over again. Okay, so we're now back to the record, the loop is gone, and the record can carry on, and we can do some more stuff over it later like this. Okay, we've got a breakdown coming here. What we've got in the Remix 16 is a phrase from another record. We're going to trigger that over the record that's playing on the break, and you get something like this when it arrives. That's the sort of thing you can introduce a sample of another record, mix it into the record that you're playing, and provide a nice audio texture for the crowd.
The first thing you may have noticed is that I've completely changed the set around from the standard mode, which is the turntable like that position with the arm to the right. Most DJs do this style now because it's a lot faster for tricks, and basically the arm is just completely out of the way, so you're less likely to knock it across. We'll start with equipment first. You may have noticed that these Technics turntables are slightly different from the 1200s and 1210s. These are the new limited edition 1200s, which are kind of a glossy piano black look to them. They also have a reset button, which enables you to go straight into the normal pitch quartz lock, just at a touch of a button. And also you got this glamorous gold look to it as well, not as quite as good as my gold plated in 89, but still. This is the new Technics SH DJ 1200 mixer. It's got prolonged faders. They're gold plated, so they'll last a lot longer, so you don't need to use these fluids anymore to clean your fader or get that kind of extra slickness. They're already like that. They have a trim button, or knob shall I say, which enables you to balance out your difference in recordings. You also got your EQ, high and bass. You've got smooth switches, your master, an auxiliary effector, which I believe does enable you to have an extra channel, so you don't have to use the lines and the phono. You've got your mic, your monitor. It's got an exclusive thing called booth. So if you're out on a live DJ set, you can also have a booth monitor as well as your headphones and your cue switch. And you can also select between your monitoring in your headphones and the master output through your headphones. You also may have noticed in recent years through the championships that a lot of DJs have a lot of labels on the record going on. And the reason for this is that we use these for queuing points, so we don't really have to use the headphones in the mixes. And this just basically enables us to do a fast cue. So if I just demonstrate to you how this usually works, I can pretty much just put the record in on the edge of the tape and just drag it in, and it'll scratch right across, and it instantly cue from where I want it to. So that doesn't even take half the time it would for me to flick the headphone switch, plug in the headphones, quickly cue, and all that business. And also, what I've noticed with having it there, you won't lose that queuing point. So if say you're in the mix and you're cutting back, normally the DJ may miss it, or it may jump or skip. With the queuing tape there, it won't go past that point. So if you can hear it starts from there, I can wind it back, and it's always bad. And some DJs have capitalised on that and use that as that trick, like they were doing something fantastic. So there's a tip there. I can demonstrate how we do this. This is known as splicing tape, and the original use of this was to splice. Producers would use this to splice edits on a reel. Just a fair little amount. Just a little slice like that. And then what I tend to do, I find my cueing of the sound I want to use. So I find the sound I want to use. So I want to use that sound. I then pause the record. And this is the bit where you need the most patience. I will then slide the blade with the slicing tape into the right up against the needle, and just have it at a slight angle, because I found that at a slight angle you can kind of scrape the record straight in, so it's even quicker. And then I normally just lift the arm, move that across, stick that down ever so gently, or you scratch the record, and hopefully I can just move that across, and you'll hear, there you go. And I can wind back and it'll always be there. Just at a slight angle, if you notice, so when I can slide it across it, it leads the cue in. And that's the secret of the splicing tape. We use normally adhesive sticky labels for an indicator to understand where exactly we cue from when we're in the fast mix. So if I know that a certain sound I've queued up with a splicing tape is always going to hit on a certain point, then the indicator will also do that as well. So I know all the time if I want a certain word, it's going to be at 12 o'clock, and I usually mark it clockwise like that. So I know bad is always at 12. It's never going to turn away from that, unless obviously I've repositioned the turntable.
1, 2, 3, 4, get it! Jack to the rhythm of rhyme, I'm talking simple. 1, 2, 3, 3.
And now I'm going to demonstrate while we stack the records.
Watch out! Watch out! Here comes that funky man! You better run! Cause he's gonna blow your mind!
I'm rocking beats and with death-defying beats and I'm never squeaking. I'm always freaking when I'm speaking. Inside I'm keeping a statement for policing. I'm down for piecing, but not turn the other cheek in. So
Wham, wham, right in the kisser. There's no way that you can diss the original whip. Original whip. Original whip. Believe it or not, Holmes, I'm not a liar. Here we go. Round and round and round and round and feels up, pounding, steady, steady, pounding, feels up and don't
I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Of course, there is a great difference between performing live and in your bedroom. And my tip to most DJs out there is that you are going to obviously have stage fright, but you've got to look at it as a positive thing. You know, make sure you communicate with your crowd. You know, look at them. Don't be frightened. You know, you're not on your own. They're out there to see a true champ. They want to see a winner. You know, and that could be you. So give them a show.
You may wonder why over 1,000 DJs every single week send us this great pile of charts, either in the post or on the fax machine. The reason being is they get free records, and that is a great incentive. Now, what does the record industry like from that? They give you free records, but you must give them something in return, and that return is to give them an honest reaction, whether it be in your chart or with the reaction report that comes back to them every single week. One of the charts that we compile every single week is the Buzz chart. It basically is a tip sheet that is put together by all the top DJs in the UK. The sales chart has input from dozens of shops on fax and by phone every single Monday morning and goes to compile a top 40 every single week. The second chart that I'm involved with is the one that all the DJs have their input into, and that is Mix Mags Club chart. We compile a top 60, which is put together from all of these, and that is 1 week's charts.
I don't think any DJ should be completely reliant on promos. There's this air of mystique built up around the DJ promo, and I think a lot of DJs out there feel that without a few promos in their box, they're useless, they won't get work. What I would say is you've got to earn the right to get promos, and you do that by, you know, hard work and graft, you know, and making a noise about yourself, establishing your own individual style as a DJ. You don't necessarily do that with promos. If you search around, if you're prepared to buy imports, if you're prepared to dig out unusual oldies, if you go to second-hand shops, if you just look out for interesting white labels, you can still be upfront and develop a unique style, the sort of style that will get a buzz on your name and will lead to the gigs that will lead to the record companies coming to you. I remember when I first used to go and see Sasha play at Shelley's, and the record industry as a whole were not particularly aware of him. He wasn't really on any promotional mailing lists. He didn't have any promos, but he still had a very loyal crowd that worshipped his every move and which created the buzz around his name that was led to where he is today. So I think it's important to remember that promos aren't the be-all and end-all of your set. They're the bonus when, after however many years of hard work it may be, you find you get into that position where you've got a cherished residency or you're a sought-after guest DJ. So yes, it's great to have them, but don't think they're the be-all and end-all. As for when you do get onto promotional mailing lists, you do to an extent have to play by the record company's rules. I mean, you're not all going to reach the heights of a Sasha or a Pete Tong. So if they're sending you free records, they want to know what you're doing with them. So that's where these sorts of things come in. Firstly, you'll get a mailing list application form. Some are a lot more complicated than this. We use a fairly basic one. We like to know where you're playing and how often you're playing there. Most companies will require some proof of that, be it flyers, a confirmation letter from a venue manager, that sort of thing. The size of the crowd you're playing to. You might be playing in a 2,000 capacity club, but if there's only 100 people in there, then companies aren't going to want to send you their free records. You might be playing in a 600 capacity club that's rammed 3 nights a week, and you've got a loyal crowd, then you're probably more worthwhile. We'd like to get an idea of what sort of records you play, without wishing to pigeonhole things too much. We ask questions like what producers and remixers excite you. We ask if you had a night off, which other DJ would you go and see? I think that always gives a good idea of how dedicated or professional you are, and what your bag is. And then our final question, which is we place great value on, is are you in a position where you feel you can actively play promos, imports or pre-release product at your gigs? If the answer to that question is yes, you've got a very good chance of getting on our list. Charts are important to a lot of promotions companies. If you get on a mailing list and you're playing their records, do your dance floor chart returns, show them what you're playing, send those chart returns to all the important music magazines, Mix Mag and Mix Mag Update, Record Mirror, DJ, etc., etc. Fill in your reaction sheets. That's the other golden rule. You're getting a record for nothing. The record company wants to know if you like it. They won't necessarily banish you from their mailing list if you say no, as long as you give them feedback before the record's released. Then you played your part in helping the record company, and you'll keep getting the records.
I try not to give too many advanced pressings out as possible. I try to keep everybody on an equal. There are times I will bring a record around and even give a few copies out to some selective jocks who are influential and get the word, we're on the street going. But basically, I really try not to give out advanced pressings because everybody's equal to me.
A lot of feedback. Yes, the DJ's feedback is the lifeblood of a record pool. Without feedback, we know absolutely nothing what's going on. We know absolutely nothing about what's happening with that record in the street. And in turn, we cannot pass information on to the record labels. And they can't turn around and pass information to their bosses to prove that record pools are credible. So without the feedback, there's a lot of problems that can occur. So everybody who comes here, they absolutely have to do feedback. And also, they have to hand in a top 20 chart of their previous week. That's the hottest records they played that night. Whether it be record pool records, whether it be imports, whether it be stuff they're working on, whether it be acetates, whatever. We need to know this so we can turn around and say, look, this is a hot record in this area. This record will sell. Get it into the stores.
I call almost all the Billboard reporters on the panel each week. I try to get hold of everyone. Obviously, sometimes time constraints again. You can't reach everybody. There's also a few I don't talk to for personal or business reasons. They're supposed to be the main DJs in their markets, but that's not necessarily what it's all about, and that's Billboard's choice, not my choice.
Record pools are the most powerful and the best networking and distribution organization that a professional disc jockey can belong to. And we're also an intermediary between the record labels and the DJ. We exist because we reach parts of the country that the record labels normally cannot reach. A lot of times they don't know that these certain cities exist, and the DJs that belong here, who live out there, come and get the records, and they go back to their area and expose a whole new audience to this, and that also helps, increase record sales.
I couldn't say whether a Billboard reporter is under pressure because that's not my way of promoting records, so go ask an independent. They'll be able to tell you more than I can on that one.
In America, there are between 95 to 100 record pools.
Record pools are a great distribution center and can help you obviously get a record started. It makes it a little easier on my job. Instead of reaching out to each individual member, I can reach out to one person who's supposedly is supposed to know what his pool members, are doing with my record. It also helps if a record pool knows retail, knows radio stations, and knows what's going on in their market, who's playing in the hot clubs, who's doing what, who's influencing. Let's try again. Influencing radio and other facets of the music business.
What record pools do for record labels is we reach regions in this country that they know absolutely nothing about. They might have their own mailing list, but there's also DJs who are not on that mailing list collectively reach more people than their actual mailing list. So this is basically the center where everybody comes in and they pick up their product and they take it back out, and it just spreads throughout the country or to whatever region that you're servicing.
I think a record pool is capable of breaking a record, absolutely. If they take it to the next step. Obviously they can create a buzz at retail, but if you're just selling a record at retail and it doesn't go past... We always used to say back in the old days, Paradise Garage, we were wondering if the record was crossing King Street. You know, it would be great if Larry the Van would play a record, but if it didn't make it past Vinyl Mania or Carmine Street, then, you know, it served a very small purpose, and that was it.
In order for a DJ to be accepted by a record pool, they have to take the initiative and contact the pool first off. They need to be a working DJ, whether it be club or radio, and they need to be at their place of employment at least maybe about 4 months, for about a period of 4 months. They also need to have references in the music industry. They need people to call here to say, look, this such and such DJ definitely has an impact in their region. They also need to be very serious about this. They need to take this as a profession, not somebody who's just going to take this as a hobby on a weekend or something like that. We're looking for people that actually eat, live, and sleep as a DJ. You know, guys or women who basically live off this. We don't want anybody in here who takes this lightly, because in the long run, this can further their career. A record pool can open up so many doors for you in this industry. And if you're not serious about that and you're not ready to take that step, you know, we don't have the time for that.
Can I tell you something? Even to this day and age, when I hear my records out in clubs, or when I get a #1 Billboard record, or when I hear my record on the radio, I still got the rush. And the day that rush goes away is the day I won't be working in the music business anymore.
To become a member of this pool, we keep it relatively low, because we're very sensitive to the issue of DJs when they're working in these clubs. That we know, as a standard, which is hopefully it'll change, a lot of DJs don't make that much money. It takes a while for you to get to that level where you can demand your fee. But in order to get that way, you have to work, and we understand that. So we try to meet them when it comes to entering a pool, paying their dues and stuff like that. Far as other pools throughout the country, I don't know. I really can't answer that, but I can just guess and say I'm sure there's different prices and different criteria for them to join their different organizations as a rule.
One club DJ can absolutely break a record. It's obvious by what goes on in New York City. And I'll stand in a record store and I will hear too many times, Junior played this, Junior played this, Junior played this. And believe me, most of the time it's always Junior played this.
We're sort of like the radio stations. I mean, what makes us signature DJs or whatever is that we break records. I mean, I find records and I break them. You know, it doesn't matter what tempo the record is. I mean, I'll take a chance in the middle of the night and play something that's like 100 beats per minute. And we just have to take chances and break records.
I don't think it can hurt that a disc jockey has such influence on the market. It's just, it can hurt when the disc jockey lets it go to his head and uses it to his advantage in a non-professional way.
I think DJs become important because of this, because of the massive, the people that go out to, the kids that go out to hear us play. I think it's a release for them, and I think it's not an MTV thing, and it's not a pop music thing. So we're sort of their pop idols or whatnot, because they're not. I don't play to an MTV or a VH1 audience. I mean, they're just clubbers, and we become their fans, I guess.
In order to reach a certain level in this industry as a disc jockey, whether it be just playing in clubs, whether it be remixing records, producing records, writing songs, or whatever, if you want to become a member of the organization, the main objective is for you as a DJ to expose music. You don't have to be playing in a venue where it's 600 people. I'll accept someone in the pool who, if they're working 2 or 3 nights a week, playing to around 200 to 300 people. Why? Because they're consistently working, they're consistently exposing that music, and people are sitting there all the time. They have their loyal following. And once you become a member of the pool, then in turn, this is basically a stepping stone. Because the people that come here weekly, you get to know them. You know, we introduce everyone. You know, this is the way we run the pool is, we want everyone to be everyone's friend and support. We don't just let them walk through the door and say, "Hi guys, you know, here's your records," or, you know, give us your feedback or whatever. and you're out the door. No, we don't do that like that. We want this more like a family type setting. You know, that's why it's basically a cool hangout. You know, it's a cool spot for them to do that, and you build a relationship with people, and that in turn, you know, it's the networking system at work.
Now this is DMC, the home of remixing.
This is DMC Studio 4. As you saw, the tape machine over there, containing 24 tracks of analog information, which comes up these faders here up the side of the desk. Also, we have various other faders, the large ones and the small ones here, to enable us to bring back, say, effects, or alternatively, we can synchronize keyboards and samplers to the tape. So basically, we've just got millions of tracks that we're able to use when we're recording and when we're mixing. To take you through the desk very briefly, obviously one channel is all you need to know because the rest of it is just duplicated. At the top of the desk we have the EQ system, which is just for equalizing various frequencies of the sounds that comes up each channel. So if you have a lead vocal here or a bass drum there or a snare drum there, you can change the sound of it. You also have auxiliary system here, which is just sends. Basically it sends two effects, so say the reverb will be on send 1, the delay will be on send 2, etc, etc. There's various buttons sort of down here which I won't need to go into too much detail, but basically all involves the changing of the sound from the mixing process. In the center section we have the mix computer, which affects all of the faders. So when you're actually doing a record, say if you have a lead vocal here and you want to just slightly what we call ride it, which is, you know, just change the level of it in whilst you're mixing, the mix computer will remember what you did, so you don't have to do it next time, consequently aiding mixing no end.
At the time I was making the move from being a DJ to mixing music together onto tape for transmission on radio or for presentation to a company like DMC. The first step was to go onto tape, to buy a reel-to-reel tape recorder, which gave me the ability to put tracks onto quarter-inch tape, tiny thin piece of tape, and the beauty of that particular format as opposed to cassette is that you could edit, you could record a section and physically cut the tape and edit pieces together, and that was kind of a major turning point in the move from sort of like playing music to putting it down onto tape and making mixes. From then I integrated effects like digital delays, reverbs, stuttery tape edit, so that the big step was from record onto tape, and the accessibility of tape to edit and do weird and wonderful effects. At that particular time, and we're talking about the period of about 83 to 85, MIDI was blossoming as a musical language, communication language between instrumentation in the studio, and it was in its very early days then. So MIDI was a quite big step.
Would you like to tell us, Paul, in layman's terms, what is MIDI?
MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It's a communication language between samplers, keyboards, effects, anything in the studio can be usually controlled over MIDI. Triggering of single notes, playing of keys on a keyboard, playing of sounds, altering patches on effects. A multitude of things can be controlled via MIDI. It's basically a language, like computers operate on one particular language. Musical instruments in a studio, samplers, etc., operate on the language of MIDI.
So the auxiliary sends go to the effects. This is our effects unit here. Wide range of effects varying from reverb such as the TC and the lexicon to multi-effects units which can do anything from phasing, flanging and delays and everything, which will be these two here. We have a dedicated delay here and a more extensive EQ system just here, a compressor for recording and limiting sound when vocalists are in and, you know, getting stuff to tape. Another delay, a couple of gates, that's about it really.
I think if you're a DJ starting off today into the world of production, the basic requirements that you would need initially are a computer, a sequencing package and a sampler. Those are the three things which would kickstart you into the world of production. the computer would actually run the sequencing package. The sequencing package is something which basically reads MIDI notes, notes off a keyboard, etc., and translates those into triggers that the sampler would interpret as triggers for particular sounds. The sampler digitally records individual sounds for you to access and play back at your will. So those are the basic three requirements. On a budget of about £1,000, it may be difficult to actually get all that, but my recommendation would be to scour the classified advertisements in magazines such as Sound on Sound, Future Music, etc., which you can get at your local newsagents or your major newsagents, and have a look through and see if you can pick up a sampler cheaper than you would in a shop. It may be a couple of years old, but what the heck, you know, you can usually find some good bargains out there. Find yourself an Atari 1040 computer, and maybe somebody's selling a second-hand Cubase program which would sequence the information that you're putting into the computer. If you can stretch the money or squeeze enough money out of your relatives to buy a little MIDI keyboard, then all the better. You can enter the information via a keyboard. So those are the basic requirements.
Well, here we are at the Golden Tower, Capital Radio, the radio station that most DJs aspire to. And in actual fact, there are two stations inside this building, Capital FM and Capital Gold. Let's go inside and have a close look at both stations.
True, the songs we made famous, playing non-stop the number ones of 1990. We make no sacrifices. Elton John gets his first ever solo chart topper, spent 5 weeks there.
French again? You're not French either. We got, what a weird lot we have this morning. We got a lot of people with French names who aren't French this morning. Probably in France are a lot of people with English names who aren't English. Right, okay.
I think these days the DJs have got to come across as, you know, smart, intelligent people who know what the radio station is looking for and know where they would fit into it. I think you've got to know how you would fit into a station's sound and style. That wasn't the case 20 years ago. If you had a very good, strong individual personality, you could probably carry the sway. Now, there's so many stations, it's very difficult to stand out. So first of all, fit in, and then ultimately stand out.
To me, I think to be a disc jockey, it is an essential thing to have a personality, because there will be times when we will go back to personality radio. Now, if there is somebody there who hasn't got a personality, and there are quite a few people working at the moment that are just playing the records one after another, and not saying anything. But then, if, say, the program director says, well, we want a bit more personality, then it's quite important to have one.
Well, I don't think it can have, not for early part of the day broadcasting. I mean, people still look for informative, amusing breakfast shows, and with Chris Tarrant, Tony Blackburn, you get that type of a program. I think once you've come past midday, I think people are looking for music then. I think it's to do with a modern lifestyle as much as anything else. I don't think it's that people don't want to be entertained. I think it's that their lives are lived in a much pacier style than they used to be, particularly in and around London and the southeast. And with people getting out and about, they've only got time really to hear the tunes. They haven't got time to hear somebody getting in the way of the records. And also, the records themselves, it seems that the audience like to hear them played without interruption, without too much talking over them. So what I talked about in the way that I started in the early 60s, actually was a bit of an art form, I think, in the 60s. Maybe the early 70s as well, but I don't think it's perceived as that now, because I think your speech now is analysed, and if it isn't quality, then you're marked down as somebody who's, you know, a bit of a buffoon.
Welcome to my world tour of Studio D at Capital Radio in London, and these are some jingles, which are basically on cart as such. Still very old-fashioned, like the old 8-track. They re-cue themselves when they go to the machine. But the reason we have these is because a lot of DJs here, when offered new fandangled technical things, preferred this, because they said it's easier to find what you want like that because you know where it is, rather than having to go, oh, now let's have a look, I want D173. It takes a long time, so people like to go and then they can do things immediately. For instance, if you want to hear something that just goes, we've got a hot one for you, you can do that, put it in, and then it just goes like this.
We've got a hot one for you.
So you can do things really quickly. If that was on a you know, a special sort of tape, I'd have to go and look for it and things like that.
On here we have a log. The next commercial I'm going to play is digital computers. So I just push 1, 3, 4 in, as you can see there, and when I press this button here,
Hi there, I'm the magician for your children's party.
you can stop it, and you can sequence it from one to another. So if you wanted to, I tend to press the buttons myself because you can get them going faster, and it sounds a little slicker, but they will actually sequence. If you want them to sequence, they'll just go from one to another. That's called the DAMS system.
Now on a running order that we have here, which is my list of records here, it shows that the next track, even though it's an oldie, is kept in the studio. It's 791 track 12. So what I'll do is I'll go over here and actually look down this one in here until I find 791. It's about 2,000 CDs in here. And there we go, 791 at the top. Pull it out. And the track I want is track 12. I can just check that off there. And there it is, 12, Killer by Adamski with Seal. So take that round here, and without going to the library, it's all kept inside this dead-on case to avoid getting any fingerprints on it at all. It stays like that. Place it in here, put it in, tune it to track 12, and instead of having to go and get that oldie from the library, find it, polish it, make sure it's all right, I just press this and there it is.
I think it's almost impossible to come here without any other experience in any other broadcasting area. I mean, I think you, and that's a side of clubs, I think you've got to have done radio, certainly. As I look at most of the broadcasters here, they've all been, with I think only about one exception, somebody that I trained from the very start, they've all come outside first of all, and I think you have to do that. You have to go through your local hospital radio or your local community radio station, as more and more of those open now. And then your next step is probably to get into one of the smaller independent radio stations, and then work your way up, going from small towns to cities to big cities.
This is an interesting little device. This is a TV screen. Obviously, in the breakfast show, we have a lot of traffic and weather. The weather, if we wanted the outside weather temperature, this is a touch screen, so I will now get the outside weather. The weather will come up on there. It's 8 o'clock now. It's 8:44, but it's the 8 o'clock hour. It's 6 Celsius, 43 Fahrenheit, humidity at 61, reading the top line there. 16 miles now from a southwesterly direction, that's where the wind's coming from, and the rain is, well, there's no rain at all. It's because we've got a roof on. But outside, there's no rain. If you want the traffic, you just press the traffic sequencing there. And I want the trains, I don't want all the other traffic, so I can just press the trains. And there are the trains and all the other bits and pieces, and we wind it up on a thing there. It's rather like an auto cue in a television studio, and that's the way I get it. And it's updated from downstairs in our news department.
This is the touchscreen where you can pick and choose which DJ you are. It won't make you funny if you want to be the breakfast DJ, but it'll actually make you sound the same sort of level. Just by touching the screen, you can move this around instead of adjusting any of the knobs and buttons on here, which normal DJs have to do in the morning, and change the bass and the treble and the echo. All you do is pick and choose your preset number. I'm number 3, and it now knows that I'm on the air and ready to broadcast. The microphone is totally set for moi.
Well, if you're at the very top of the tree, I mean, never look to make a fantastic amount out of radio programs themselves unless you really are at the top of the tree. Right at the very summit, there could be £500,000 in it for you if you are the very, very best. If you're a medium line player, you might make 100,000 a year. If you're just a little bit below that, you could do 50 grand a year. I mean, most people here are on a basic of over 20 to 25,000 pounds a year, but they've got to earn it. They've got to prove themselves as well. As I said, there's a definite difference between broadcasting in the morning from 6 o'clock in the morning till 12 noon and broadcasting later on in the day.
Any advice for an aspiring DJ?
Yeah, definitely. Whatever you do, whether it's having a manager like I did and keep pushing him to get you a job, or whether it's you just banging on the door of a hospital radio station saying, let me go round the wards and collect dedications. Either way, don't give up.
At KISS 100, the whole issue of new talent and where you're going to get it is very important, because as a station, we know that it's really important to target the people that you're talking to. So we don't try to talk to everyone. We don't try to be like other radio stations. We actually try and talk to the 15-24 audience that we're going for. So finding new talent who can help us stay on the edge and do that is very important. One of the things I would say to a budding DJ is not to be put off by the fact that there are more and more radio stations and they seem to be more and more anonymous, and it seems to be more and more difficult to get hold of the person who's actually going to sign the dotted line for a contract and give you that show. Don't be put off by that. What's more important is sticking to your guns. If you think that you really are going to be the next Judge Jules, and you think that you can do all the things that are required, then get to know the radio station that you want to get a show on as well as you can. That means that you find out who the producer is, you ring up and find out what they're running on air, you find out where the DJs are playing, and you do your homework. It's not enough anymore, I think, just to be a good voice. You have to do all that work. And if someone says no, then try again. I mean, often, and it's happened to me, you get told, no, you will never, ever make it in radio. But then suddenly a radio station comes up which is attempting to do things in a different way. And it may just be right for you. So the strongest thing is just not to give up. You can do it, because there are loads of people on KISS who have had no training, never been on a legal radio station, and yet they've been with the station for 6 years. So they can do it.
Got me involved in radio, started in the club because I look at it this way. The drive you have of the audience believing in you, if they can listen to you in the club, they can listen to you in the radio, and that's where you know your followers is traveling along with you. So here it is, by me setting up an established name of myself in the clubs, and then here it is, the people at the radio station, you know, have interest in me because they heard my name somewhere. They feel that, yo, if we bring him on the radio, the same audience is going to take time tuning and listening, and that's what it is. One thing led to another.
At KISS, the kind of DJs I'm looking for who would be good mixers would be DJs who actually want to be part of the specialist part of the output. Currently 50% of the schedule is devoted just to specialist music, and there you're looking at a different range of skills. It's broadcasting skills, it's the ability to really connect with your audience, but also it's people who want to hear at least a flavour of something that they would hear in a club. So mixing would be important. It's an added bonus if you can do that for daytime, but it's not essential.
Well, a lot of people don't understand. Radio DJ, in the past, a radio DJ is today a radio personality. DJs in the past used to go from city to city where they used to be playing music and also announcing what's going on the mic throughout the country. But right now, a mixed DJ, he may just stay local, but you never know. You may have to move somewhere, and not only that, as you move to the next set, you gotta be prepared what type of music they're into, because the same thing I'm playing here, they probably may not be playing down in Atlanta, and they probably may not be playing down in Houston, even though, like, quote unquote, soul music, hip hop music is universal, but everybody got their own sound. Chicago got the house, DC got the go-go, Miami got the bass. You gotta be prepared wherever you go.
When a DJ presents themselves to me as program director at KISS, what's really important is that they demonstrate that they do have a passion for music, that they really do have a knowledge of music. I think it's no longer the case that, certainly in modern radio and a modern radio station that broadcasts dance music, it's not enough to just say your name, a time check, and the name of the station. You've got to be able to give something a bit more. So in the application, I want, if possible, a couple of lines about that person. I want to know what they're interested in and how well they can demonstrate that they really do have a passion for the music, so that it's not a case of someone who would actually like to be on a pop station or a jazz station. It's someone who would die to be on a dance station. So it's really an application that demonstrates that they really want to be here. Again, if possible, some kind of demo. It's not always possible for a young DJ to get a demo because they won't have access to a studio, but it's the only way I can hear what their voice is like. So a demo and something in writing about themselves is usually what I need.
Well, it goes so many different ways. Number one, staying steady in the clubs and show your consistency of making the manager, the club owner, the bartenders, the staff, security, everybody believe that you can make that crowd move and make that crowd keep coming back. Other aspects is a big thing was going on today throughout, I don't know if it's around the world, probably is, because as I just went to France, I know it shows so much, it's mixtapes. Mixtapes is spectacular. Mixtapes is going around like crazy. And you know what? I'm happy for it. A lot of people saying that mixtapes is destroying the quality of what the feel of this whole genre is. I don't believe so. Because I remember before hip-hop got on radio, hip-hop got on vinyl, hip-hop was on tapes. Like I said, I got a collection of all the old tapes. When we used to be in the parks, used to be in the center, used to be in the old little clubs. So that's another aspect. Another thing is, a DJ can take himself and develop him to the next stage of becoming a producer, having that ear. You never know. You may go in the studio, start doing some remixes. Remixes lead into producing. So many different eras. Hey, it's good to make $1, but remember, what does it take? What does it take to make that dollar? Come from here, from what you do.